Plus, in her no doubt copious spare time, she taught cybersecurity at the University of Cincinnati, helping it establish its new certificate program in the field. She's pretty much seen and done it all. IT security, privacy, risk management, forensics, and she has very important insights to share. Not just about the tactics and challenges, but what it might all mean going forward. So please join me in welcoming Mary Chaney.
You and Devin. I don't know what this is. So, hello, Mary Chaney, Director of the Security Operations Center for Johnson & Johnson, and probably, based on conversations earlier, the most popular or / unpopular person in the room. I don't have any slides, so I will roam, I'm sorry. So when we're talking about the topic du jour today, ransomware, we'll get back to that because we see it as well. But as he stated, I've spent time in the EDU space, government space, private industry, as even a consultant. So essentially helping individuals all my life with information security. I listen to you guys, and I know Jim is going to blow up because this is not supposed to be a conference about security. However, it seems to be on you guys' minds, so I'll try to provide some expertise and guidance in what we're doing, what we're seeing within Johnson & Johnson, and hopefully help with some of this stuff. So, I came here with a thought, and the thought was ransomware, and I guess that we should continue that discussion because, we do have those challenges as well. But first, I want to talk about data, which is why we're essentially here and why ransomware is such a huge topic for everyone, because it's about protecting of the data. And I always say the difference between working in the government space and the private industry space has been significant for me, and it's a significant adjustment for me. Because in the FBI and the government, you can't build a building without taking into consideration the data, even the data even before the people. Okay, what kind of data is going to be stored or utilized in this facility? Is it unclassed? Is it class? Is it top secret? Is it other super secret stuff? And depending upon the data, that's how you build a building. And then you start talking about networks. I mean, the walls had to go all the way up to the top. You drop seal. I've learned more about physical security in the FBI, about how to build a building than I ever really wanted to know. Even the reinforced planners that are outside of most GSA contract buildings that GSA is the contractor that builds all the government buildings, and they all look alike no matter what city you go in. And you see these big stone planters, and you wonder why is there big stone planters? Because they stop cars. So they stop physical security threats. So essentially, those are the types of things that when I got out of the FBI and tried to, I said, I have an IT background, went to law school, the FBI came, FBI said they'll give me a gun, and they'll pay me to work out. So yes, that's my perfect job, right? Perfect job. I was already a geek. I was an IT geek, but you guys are gonna give me a gun. Cool. So I went into the plan A was the FBI, but unfortunately they had a hiring freeze coming out of law school once I passed the bar. I am licensed in Texas, by the way. And came out of, and they had a hiring freeze when I got out. So they weren't hiring at the time, so I was forced to practice law. Okay, so forced to practice law, and I practiced law in DC. But, that, of course, eventually unfortunately after September the 11th, I went into, they started hiring again, and I went into the FBI then, and then they also put me where I actually had experience in, which is IT. So I investigated cybercrime, right? So back then, with 2002, it was auction fraud, eBay auction fraud was big. Denial of service attacks were big. They were just starting to come. What was really bigger was called internal threat now, but back then I called it internal hackback cases where employees were fired, still had privileges that they shouldn't have had when they left. They were disgruntled. They went in and they essentially caused a lot of havoc. And I was successfully able to prosecute a couple of those cases. One was an ex-husband, a disgruntled ex-husband that went after his wife. I don't know what he was thinking, but he did that. And you see a lot of, you see all of these things. And the theme is essentially nothing has changed. When I got out of the FBI, I tried to go into private industry. You know, I had a couple of employers tell me that people from the government don't get it. People from the government don't understand corporate America, and they don't understand how to, what's different. The government is just different. And I said, well, yeah, it is different, but there are some best practices that corporate America can utilize in order to best protect themselves. And this was back in 2008, right? Yeah, that was when I left the FBI. So as I've transitioned from the government to private industry, it really is a situation where you guys need to think more like cops. And I say this because, you know, you have to think about not only knowing yourself, but knowing your threat. So the first things first, the first thing the FBI taught me was essentially to know your threat. You have a gun. Remember, I told you they gave me a gun. You have a gun, so one thing's for sure, in any given situation, if you're an FBI agent or a law enforcement officer in the room, you have the license to kill anybody in the room if they are a threat. You gotta make darn sure it's a threat first, okay? So, you have to be able, the one thing they taught me is how to think in crisis situations. This is why my history has been coming up in incident response. So you being able to sit back and actually analyze and effectively manage and see what's going on and how to battle that. So the tools, tactics, and procedures, I'm missing one, TTPs, P, what is P? Anyway, the procedures that criminals utilize to actually infiltrate a company have not changed. What's changed is people panic more. Okay, that's what you have to, and I tell my boss this every day, you have to have the right temperament to deal with what's going on out there. If you panic, you will lose, period, because you're not thinking clearly. Ransomware is the perfect example because it's one that we've been talking about. If you panic, you will lose. First of all, you need to understand, ransomware started when I started teaching at the University of Cincinnati. I remember when it came out because me and the students, well, the modern day version of ransomware, me and the students did we talked through it and we talked what it was about. It was initially designed to target individual people that are, basically the way that they got you to get ransomware, or the way that they tried to infiltrate you is to get you to click on a link to execute a malicious file, to lock up all of your files and actually send money to get them back. Now, for you, well, not for me, but for any individual, for my mom, this will be very, very, very hard for her because she doesn't have, unfortunately, the type of security that I have in my home network. Okay, so you get me infected with ransomware. You have to deal with the fact that I do monthly image backups of each one of my PCs in my home, mine and my children's. And I also do daily backups of my data. Okay, so odds are you're only going to get what happened before the backup at 9 a.m. Okay, so again, this is the same practice that individual companies could utilize in order to battle something like this. My mother gets hit with ransomware, I just say F8 and just restore image. Go all the way back to when I bought the computer and we'll deal with it then. Not now though, after the past, and she's still not up. The past 3 weeks I've been on the phone call with my mother after dealing with what I deal with at work, and I have to be on the phone, and my mother's 63. And there was a time where, and I've been remote from her, so I moved she's in Cincinnati, so I moved from Cincinnati to Houston, then I went to Maryland and LA, back to Cincinnati. So now I'm in Pennsylvania, so I'm used to doing remote tech support for my mom, okay? So this is not new, but what I did this time was like, you know what, we're just gonna take image files, right? So let me show you, go buy some CDRWs and let us create an image file. And by the way, they don't sell CDRWs anymore. But we're gonna find some. I'm gonna find them on Amazon, I'm gonna ship them to you next day, and we're gonna go through this process of creating an image because I'm tired of us restoring all the way back to the very beginning and going through all the updates for the past 3 years. So, but those types of ideas in regards to how you protect yourself are important because what happens? Someone gets hit with something like ransomware. Their first instinct is, oh crap, and they make a knee-jerk response and they try to restore. Is that the first thing you should do when you get hit by ransomware? Does anyone know what your attention, what you should be paying the most attention to? Isolation. Finding what zero is. Who's infected? Finding that out and take them off the network. Because guess what? If you restore before you get them off the network, it's just going to encrypt everything over and over and over again. So you're back to square one. You have to isolate and contain the machine that's actually causing you to have issues. Now that's what has to do with users. Okay, users, you're never going to battle that. And a lot of times people, and I was consulting with one of our third-party vendors yesterday. It's not about you. You just so happen to have a vulnerability. So what's the attack? The attack is someone is taking advantage of a vulnerability that you have in your system. Is that new? No, it's not. The way they're getting infected is the same way you got infected before. People clicking on links and emails and taking advantage of vulnerabilities on your network. So again, it's just ransomware is dangerous. And I recognize that my former employer advises people to pay the ransom. The FBI, they came out publicly and said this, which is, my opinion is good and bad. Of course, I did not give the disclaimer that Devin gave, and what I'm saying is only given by me, and it's not representative of Johnson & Johnson and the family of companies. So this is just, this is just Mary's opinion. I had to stop that because I'm being filmed. But in any event, you actually have to identify ground zero, who's that user infected, and get them off the network. And then, so I heard earlier, Joe, okay. He mentioned user training. That's going to stop the clicking of the link on the email. But SamSamScript is the one that takes advantage of the vulnerability on the network. That's the new, that came out in February. I remember the week. I remember the freaking week because it was Wednesday and then Friday when my phone started ringing off the hook about these new variants of ransomware. Because initially, going all the way back, I know I'm skipping everywhere, but it was just individual users. Now it's spray everyone and see who falls for it. Okay, so SamSamScript is the one that was scarier because it was taking advantage of a JBoss vulnerability. And then it was actually not only taking advantage of that vulnerability, so that means someone had to be hands on keyboard looking for this particular vulnerability to implant that particular piece of malware on your system and then cover their tracks. That one's scary. The garden variety ransomware is no different from the garden variety malicious code of everything else. It's a nuisance, but it's never going to change. But again, what can you do? Make sure you have good backups. Make sure you have great vulnerability management programs. Make sure you educate your users. And please, how many of you guys watch football? Any football fans? Any Aaron Rodgers fans? Remember Aaron Rodgers said a couple years ago, RELAX, relax? Relax. Because it's still going to happen. It is still going to become a problem. It's a problem that you have to deal with, but if you have a strategy, you can actually get it done. So another thing that ransomware does is it encrypts shares. Now this is the fun part. Okay, this is the second one. SamSamScript came out the same week as, oh goodness gracious, I don't remember all the name of them. But there's another one, many of them, but there's another one that encrypts shares. So the ransomware started where it encrypted the files that you had that you most recently accessed because they felt that that was the most important files to you. It has now graduated. They have a continuous improvement effort by hackers. Did you guys notice this? So now it was encrypted shares that you had access to. There's another variant out there that has encrypted shares that you don't even know you have access to, but you have access to. Okay, so that's a problem, and that's an issue in regards to how you effectively manage that. How do you effectively manage whether someone has access to a particular share? What's the key word? Access. If you don't have good access control, if all your shares are open, you are setting yourself up for some real major headaches and problems. So again, you're never going to prevent it. You can mitigate it. Okay? And how you mitigate it with is not technology. I'm sorry. It's not another technology. It's basic maintenance, vulnerability management, user awareness, backups, access control. Okay? Those are the things that you can do to battle this problem. But it's still going to be a problem. And, ultimately, when the FBI says pay, and everyone in here says, I wouldn't want to do that, some businesses have no choice because they don't have those other things in place. And understand me, the hackers are good business people. They will give you your data back. They will, because it's a good business model. You give me money, I give it back. Does that mean that you could potentially be a victim again? Yes, it does. But if you're crippled, completely crippled by something that's occurring to you, what other choice do you have? Restore back to the beginning, like we do my mom's computer? No, yes, no, maybe? No, that's not a good idea, because that cripples everything at that particular point. So, the things that it's causing this data, and I heard about social responsibility and hackers, but understanding the threat. This is crimeware, okay? All crimeware is how to make big money, how to make money. It's just like a burglar, okay? There's a difference between an armed robber and a cat burglar, right? Can you see it in your hand? Right? The difference between someone that takes a gun and says, give me your money, and then someone that sneaks into your house at night when you're not home. It's completely different. Okay, these are crimeware. These are the cat burglars. They're just looking for an opening. They're looking for the open window with no lights on. They're not looking for us, Johnson & Johnson. Not yet. It's going to graduate. But right now, they're not looking at what they're attacking. They're looking for the weakness. That's nothing new. That's nothing new. These are still the same things. So it's thinking about it and not panicking and thinking about, okay, how do I now battle this? Because back in February, when all these things hit, that's what we did. Now, as and I'm gonna mess up his name, the guy from Comcast Business mentioned, I have 4 groups that I manage within the security operations center. We have our intel. It's based on the kill chain model. We have intel and investigations. That particular team worries about intelligence. So that's the team when the new variants of crypto, whatever, ransom, whatever come out, they do research, okay? And they look at each individual indicator and how they're acting and how they're perpetrating this particular crime, and they're now scouring our network. Okay, are we vulnerable? Are we vulnerable? Okay, and then they also do the internal threat stuff as well. I have my threat prevention team, which is your traditional cyber network defense team. They're on the network. The traditional IT security folks managing policies on, on firewall rules, on proxies, on all of that stuff. That's that team. They make sure they do the basic blocking and tackling is what I say. Okay, then I have my threat. I'm sorry. I have my threat detection team. My threat detection team is your typical L1, L2. My L1s are my contractors. They do, we have, are they up there? No, we have Dell. We utilize Dell SecureWorks as our managed security provider, and they handle our triage. So any type of alert that comes off of our systems, they go to our triage first, triage at first, L1. Our L2 are all J&J employees. And I tell my team all the time, every last one of you that work in, because we're in Raritan, and I have a couple people in Beersa, over in Belgium, and I have a couple of people in Singapore. I have one guy in Singapore. We're all L2, so when I pick up the phone and I call the number, all of you guys have to pick up. And if there's a cluster that's there, that may be something we may want to kick up to L2 to investigate what these users are doing that they got infected with the same type of malware. And then we have cyber incident management, which I can never seem to get out of. I guess I'm good at it, but it's still nerve-wracking. So if some of you know our CISO, if they call Maureen calls me. And that's, I look at my phone and I don't know if I want to answer that, but I got to pick up. Yeah, it's not pretty. And then whenever the CISO calls, you're like, this is not going to be good, whatever it is. They never call and say hi. They never just call and say, hi, how are you doing? No, it's never like, hey, just call and check on you. No, it's Houston, we have a problem. That's what it usually is. But, and then in which my L3s, they do forensic analysis as well as reverse engineering. They have some talents in that area as well. So we have it, and it can scale down if you actually know what you're looking for. Okay, knowing yourself and knowing your threat. So I'm gonna stop because I've been talking nonstop for a while now, and I could probably continue. But I wanted to give you guys an opportunity because it seemed like there were a lot of questions. And yes, we deal with ransomware. Yes, we deal with the fraud, the CEO spoofing stuff. The beautiful thing about being Johnson & Johnson is our CEO doesn't have access to anything, so he can't get money anyway. So they can spoof him all they want to. He doesn't like it, but if they're trying to get money out of Alex, it's just not going to happen. He doesn't have the rights to do it anyway. So that's the big company feel. So yeah, we see it all. We deal with it all. So like I said, I wanted to give you guys a chance because it seemed like you had a lot of questions, and I have some expertise in the area, and I know Devin kind of kicked a lot of his questions to me. So.
Yeah, another question. I think it was about a year and a half ago. I was at the AWS conference in Las Vegas, and one of the headline events was, if I have it right, I hope it's right, J&J was going all in with AWS, so moving to shut down its data centers, to move all your workloads to AWS. So hopefully I have the company right, otherwise I'll have to say, never mind. But if that did happen, how did it affect your world? I imagine it had some profound implications for what you do.
Okay, so I've been with Johnson & Johnson since last March, and yes, they have gone all in. Have we gotten to the point where it's operational 100%? No. Yes, we do have a on-cloud premise solution. We have a private cloud. We have hybrid stuff going on in there, and we're looking at CASBs and things like that in regards to cloud access security brokers in regards to managing some of that stuff for us. It has not, it's still in the implementation phase. I'm in a group of IT people, so you know how long it takes to integrate something in a company as large as Johnson & Johnson. So we are integrated with those teams. We're talking to those teams about what our needs would be, especially when we started talking about CASBs and things like that and getting visibility into the activity there. The AWS piece, most of the majority of it right now is contractors. So we actually have the solution that we to authenticate our contractors use our AWS environment instead of giving them actual technologies, laptops. They just log into that particular environment. That's the only group right now.
Okay.
Some of our third parties. You had a question.
Yeah, so in terms of with you going to school for law and you working for the FBI, the gentleman over here had asked something about the mix of government and private. Is there anything you learned working for the government and then going into kind of like corporations and that you would suggest? And also, are there any like events or maybe even programs that government kind of might run or help companies?
Yeah, okay, twofold. Yeah, there was a lot of things I learned in the government that the private industry could utilize. And thinking more so like a law enforcement officer, especially when it comes to information security. is a good thing. It's not a lot of us out there, but having the capability to actually think like the criminals, like knowing the difference between a crimeware and a state-sponsored attack is important, especially when you start talking about rising of the blood pressure, especially within my space. So again, even knowing the differences between Russia and China, you know, on what those threat actors are actually after, gives you a barometer of how bad you want it to go, or how, you know, how much my blood pressures are going to go up. Because you, again, when you're in the trenches, you have to think clearly. You know, if someone comes to me and they says, Mary, you know, somebody, we lost PII data. And it's like, okay, so who is this person? Oh, they're the so-and-so contractor off of so-and-so. Okay, so what PII data did they lose? They just lost their data. That's not something I care about. You lost your data. That's not Johnson & Johnson's data, that's your data. That's not something that's gonna make my blood pressure go up. But getting back to your original question, the FBI, I actually just, New Jersey just cleared me again. FBI Newark just cleared me. I do have my clearance again. But they, you know, having those partnerships assist you with going to, like, I can go to the FBI and say, hey, you know, we're seeing this in our environment. That's the information sharing that we have. We're seeing this in our environment. Can you tell us anything about it? There's no such thing as more intel. You know, we have intelligence services that we actually get information from, and they share that. There's life lessons that I can probably sit here and talk to you all day about in regards to differences. But the federal government, again, more on the data side and protection of the data and taking control of that data. They weren't very good on access control because you have Snowden. However, they were good with protecting of that data. So we can have an offline discussion about career paths and goals later. Okay.
You talk so loud.
So actually, you just brought it up again, access controls. So not everyone makes the correlation between access controls and ransomware, and access controls are a proactive mechanism. What we find is challenging sometimes with our customers and prospects is convincing them that they need to get their business involved, they have to establish ownership of data, you know, everything that goes through, including all the compliance and audit needs as well. So if you were to give people advice that are in this industry, in this field, you know, how do you convince people that they need to go down this road and take that very long journey?
Yeah, that's hard because many corporations don't know where their data is. And this is not large companies, this is small companies. When I was a consultant, I consulted with smaller healthcare organizations to, you know, back then it was HIPAA, started applying to business associates, and I had a bunch of clients that were afraid of that piece. And I, you know, I'm talking to smaller, well, Cincinnati is a big hospital hub, but talking to smaller organizations to find out, okay, but where is the data? And they're like, well, I don't know where all my healthcare data is. Well, if you don't know where all your healthcare data is, then I can't help you help yourself. You know, but how do you have those conversations in regards to information security as a whole? You can't build a security program really effectively if you don't understand what's important to your business. It could be data, it could be credit card, I mean, it could be any type of data. It could be credit card data, it could be PHI, it could be PII. And if you don't have the right controls over that, even storage, access, transmit, it's real simple. How is it stored? Is it encrypted when it's stored? Check. You know, is it encrypted as it's being transmitted? Check. You know, who has access? Access is always important because that goes to internal threat. That goes to making a correlation between ransomware, and if you have access to a share that you're not supposed to, and this particular share has the production, you know, it's owning the actual keys to the kingdom, and now that's encrypted and now it cripples you. Some of those hospital organizations feel that. You know, so again, it's a painful process, but it has to be gone if it matters. You know, because we have 250 plus operating companies. We have consumer, we have medical devices, we have pharma. It's a headache, you know. But the business has to be involved to tell me what you want me to watch out for. Because I can't watch everything, but I can watch if you tell me, if you know what's most important to you, I can help you with that. And that's how you stair-step your way into a better security posture. Anyone else? I think I'm out, see?
Thank you so much.